To all the netizens, this matter truly surprised me immensely. The White House in the United States, or rather the U.S. government, experienced a serious incident involving classified materials, essentially implicating the vice president and the 7 or 8 most important people. They could all end up in jail. They could all end up in jail. Atlantic. The Trump administration actually informed me of their war plans. Jeffrey Gold. This American national security leader was included in the group chat. They talked about how they would attack Yemen, and I couldn't believe it was true. Then the bombs dropped. This is the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in the United States. Jeffrey Goldberg actually gave it to someone else. He was added to the group on Signal. The U.S. military's highly confidential discussions about plans to airstrike the Yemen organization. This is a big deal. Is the Secretary of Defense, who didn't know how to respond, being questioned as incompetent? On March 11, 2025, he received a Signal invitation from Michael Walls, encouraging him to keep going. Michael Watt. He is Donald Trump's national security advisor. On March 13th, he joined this group, called Houthi. The Grit. This group includes the Secretary of Defense, Vice President Vance, and who else? In the group, they are discussing how to conduct military strikes against the Houthi armed forces, including what weapons to use, target, timing, and arrangements. I would think, hey, are they playing games? Is this a prank or a scam? Even so, he couldn't resist accepting their request to connect, thinking to himself, if it's real, maybe they just want to discuss some ordinary topics. Ask for my opinion. 2 days later, on Thursday, March 13th, at 4:28 p.m., he joined this. This group is the Houthi Policy Group, PC Policy Group. Wow, really? Impressive people. National Security Advisor Val. Val's Deputy Secretary of Defense Kegses, and Vice President Fass. Secretary of State Nubio, Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, Director of National Intelligence, Secretary of the Treasury, are all here for the war. Why is the Secretary of the Treasury here? The White House Chief of Staff, and many members of the National Security Council, basically the entire National Security Council. There might also be the unconfirmed director of the Counterterrorism Center, Ken, here as well. All in one pot. All right, Goldberg said this is a high-level committee. A high-level committee, right. It refers to a group composed of the highest-ranking officials within the national security system, which definitely includes the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, and the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Obviously, I've never been invited to attend such high-level meetings, and in my years of reporting on the National Security Department, I've never heard of anyone saying that you can hold such important meetings on commercial communication media like Signal. Hey, Signal, how do you know there aren't any spies within Signal? The people managing Signal and hackers can easily get in, you can't guarantee. This security, this is really. The next day, Friday, was even more bizarre. Some groups, Michael Walls, sent a reduction to the team. You should have already seen it in the high security systems inbox. According to the president's instructions this morning, the conclusions and tasks are classified as high-level, confidential, meaning the detailed plan on the computer has been sent to you. The State Department and the Department of Defense have prepared a list of suggested notification recipients. Who needs to be informed? Regional allies, such as Saudi Arabia and partners. The Joint Chiefs of Staff have already. In the coming days, the most specific timeline of actions will be sent. We will work with the Department of Defense to ensure the White House, the Vice President, and the President are informed, especially if it comes to an actual attack. At that time, these people should be in the Situation Room watching the attack unfold. Watching closely. Let's see what they have to say. Hegel, if you think we should do it, we're coming. I just hate that we're building out Europe. We're here saving Europe, helping Europe clean up their mess. Why is Vance so anti-Europe? He's the leader of the anti-Europe movement. We just need to ensure that our external statements are consistent. If there's anything we can do in advance to reduce the risk of Saudi Arabia's oil divestment, we should do it. That's what I mean. It's about using people for satellite surveillance to see if anyone is attacking Saudi Arabia's oil facilities. All right, what is Hegesias saying? Vice President, I completely agree with your disdain for Europe's freeloading. It's really annoying. But whether it's right or not, we are the only ones on this planet, on our side, who can do this. Others simply can't. The issue now is timing, and I think it's the perfect time. After all, the President has ordered the reopening of the sea route, meaning we need to open the Red Sea route. I believe we should take action. The President still has a 24-hour window to make a decision, and 24 hours to issue the final order. All right, SM said this, but SM doesn't know who it is. From what we understand, the President's stance is not what you see. The attitude of these people is quite amusing. Why target the organization in Wuzhou at this time? Why has the issue with the Houthi armed organization persisted for so long? And why didn't Donald Trump take action against it as soon as he took office? Actually, it's an action aligned with ideological considerations. Increasing pressure on Iran is essentially about this, hoping to strike the Houthi armed organization so hard that even their own mother wouldn't recognize them. This would further sever Iran's direct support, thereby enhancing Israel's security. The President's stance is very clear. The green light has already been given. Look, we need to make it clear to Egypt and Europe what their returns will be. We need to have a way to enforce this, asking who these people are. When it comes to talking about war, we need to ask. Then no need to fight. We ask Egypt, and since Europe has given money, discuss it. If Europe doesn't provide compensation, doesn't give money, then what do? We pay a high price for success. We pay a high price to restore the freedom to travel. We need to make money, but they are only thinking about making money. For such an operation, it might cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And they are thinking about how to make money. It's quite funny. This involves an act of war. And the first thing is for Europe to pay. Egypt is poorer than dirt. How can you ask Egypt to pay? All right, the Minister of Defense and the President, along with the Vice President, received orders to conclude considering the final combat options against the opposition. This plan, which highlights the initial strike effects, will target command and control missiles and drones. According to the defense report, the Joint Chiefs have finalized the targets, and the military branches are ready, with notifications possible within the next 24 to 36 hours. Adjustments will be made based on weather information and other factors. He said this clearly indicates that the United States is prepared to launch a military strike within a day or two, targeting the Houthi forces, and I'm in this group. Watching all the information flow, no one noticed that there was this plan here. In the group, Mans is against announcing the launch of airstrikes. Mans doesn't agree with launching airstrikes, thinking it's a mistake. Why isn't it our concern? Well, his kind of isolationism is because only 3% of US trade goes through the Suez Canal, while Europe has 40%. He is very worried that the public won't understand the direct nature of this war, meaning the Donald Trump administration just does whatever it likes. For example, he said if saving money means giving $4 billion to Israel, it doesn't need to go through Congress, and then they also give money to Jordan and Egypt. For Israel, anything can be done, he said. You don't want foreign wars, always saying it's to protect American lives, so why are you fighting the Houthi armed group? You see, he is an extreme isolationist. Van became someone Donald Trump hadn't fully grasped in terms of bombing actions and the consistency of his messages to Europe. His message to Europe was essentially, you're on your own. So why bomb then? These two things are contradictory because it protects Europe's interests and would lead to moderate to high oil price increases. As a result, bombing the Houthi armed group wouldn't cause oil prices to rise. This guy is just talking nonsense. Because they bombed the Houthi armed group. It's obvious that it's much safer there. So the oil transported from Arabia to Europe becomes easier, and with the oil price drop, this guy has no economic sense. But he aligns with the team's decision, suggesting a delay of 1 month. Then they first leaked the information, waiting for the Americans to agree. I knew about the possible occurrence 2 hours before the first bomb was dropped, because the Secretary of Defense, Keg Sayas, on that day, at 11:44, sent me a detailed briefing of the war, including what weapons would be used, what targets would be hit, and the timing. On March 15, 2025, before 2 p.m. Eastern Time, an airstrike was conducted on Houthis armed forces with no targets, exactly as the plan was told to me. After this attack, they started attacking each other, and it was really something. Good start. You did a great job. Great work. I know it's not about the segment, but you really launched the attack. And as a journalist, I watched them plan it from start to finish. The operation was done in the region, a routine action. After this, I contacted a senior government official to ask about this, and he said he wasn't sure why he was in this group. He said being in this group was a mistake, and it was already quite absurd. Who is in this group? You need to have the highest level of clearance regarding national defense to be in it. Clearly, they got the wrong person. I suspect it might be Michael Walls or his staff who made the mistake, confusing someone who should be called Jeff. With him, Jeff Gilbert, a staff member from the Donald Trump administration, someone once said if you were deliberately let in to let people know Donald Trump's decisiveness and toughness in military actions, this isn't really too many sensitive details, and this is an illegal action discussing these things on Signal, including precise target operation times. It's impossible to withhold from the media. Now that this attack has been made public, I was also removed from the Signal group. But the whole situation, when the government was preparing for a competition, putting a journalist into a top-secret discussion group, is shocking. The House Committee on Homeland Security said, federal law requires officials to personally handle high-level secrets, and before conducting confidential meetings, they must place personal phones and other electronic devices outside of areas where sensitive information is isolated. Phones are not allowed inside. They are placed in a secure box. This is not subject to legal communication. If officials cannot personally enter the sensitive information isolation area, there are also security measures in place. The signal channel is not among them, and fundamentally, these things absolutely cannot be discussed on the signal channel. These people are all breaking the law. New York Democratic Congressman and member of the House Armed Services Committee, Ryan, stated that if a hearing is not held, he will push for an investigation. Panetta, who once served as the director of the CIA and Secretary of Defense, stated that this major blunder violates the Espionage Act and endangers national security. All right, the U.S. Espionage Act. Is this a violation of the anti-espionage law? The provisions of the Espionage Act involve collecting, transmitting, or losing defense information, and these are criminal offenses if such matters are disseminated through public media. It's criminal because using signal violates the Espionage Act as it involves discussing defense-related information. And typically, mobile phones are not allowed in that secure room. When these officials share information about ongoing military operations, they might be in public places, which poses a risk if their phones are lost or stolen. The potential risk to national security is very serious, and it is clearly stated that those who violate these laws could face severe consequences. They could be sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. Discussing these defense information and war terms on public networks could result in a 10-year sentence. When Donald Trump was asked at the White House on Monday, he said he didn't know anything about it. I have no knowledge of this. I'm not a big fan of transatlantic loyalty. White House officials later stated that an investigation is underway, and Donald Trump has already been briefed on the relevant reports. Well, should someone step down over this equally alarming national security issue, according to the Democratic lawmakers? Is this necessary? The House Armed Services Committee's full investigation hearing will be quite embarrassing. This is not just a simple mistake. Someone definitely needs to be fired. This administration's handling of our nation's most sensitive secrets makes all Americans unsafe. If it's a mid-level official, they would have their clearance revoked and face criminal investigation, possibly ending up in jail. What do the Republicans say? Some people ask why I've always been so supportive of Elon Musk, but they have certain political stances. I think the criticism is about addressing issues based on facts, not like you guys who think that just because you like someone, everything they do is right. All right. This person clearly tried to cover up, and I've also sent messages to the wrong person before. We've all done this kind of thing. But the issue is not using an encrypted network, because if these things are really to be discussed, it must be done in an encrypted manner. End-to-end encryption networks should not be on public networks. This information should not appear in unencrypted systems. Russia and China are monitoring his unencrypted phone. Russia and China have always been listening to you. In New York State, we need to establish defense mechanisms. Anything is possible, and administrative responsibility carries legal liability. They have already admitted that this was a mistake, and they will implement preventive measures to ensure these things don't happen. I don't know or can't speak for the Republicans, but let's look back at how things were. Hillary, from 2009 to 2013, used a private email server to handle official matters, instead of the official secure government email provided. As a result, 30,000 emails related to official business had to be handed over to the State Department for review and disclosure. Additionally, there were 30,000 emails that Hillary deleted because they were of a personal nature. The investigation found that, among these 30,000 emails, there were hundreds that included classified or highly classified information. There was no evidence showing that Hillary intentionally mishandled the information, but it was clear that there was improper handling of classified data. At that time, the FBI launched an investigation. The FBI director, Comey, was extremely concerned but did not recommend prosecution. 11 days before the election, it was announced that the investigation would be reopened, which affected Hillary's chances of winning. The email scandal became a focal issue in the 2016 presidential election, causing significant reputational damage to Hillary. Let me tell you some of those. Confidential matters were leaked by Russian agents through WikiLeaks. It ended up helping Donald Trump in the election. On that day, Donald Trump said, "Lock her up." She should be jailed because of the email scandal. She put our secrets into the hands of the enemy, which is unforgivable. Using a private server is unforgivable, and there were many confidential pieces of information in her emails. If Chinese hackers infiltrate the FBI, the Department of Justice should quickly take the next step, or else they will permanently lose their credibility. This was Donald Trump on Twitter claiming that Chinese hackers had infiltrated Hillary's emails. Hillary Clinton's emails, containing a lot of confidential information, were attacked by Chinese hackers. Next, the FBI needs to investigate, or their reputation will be irreparably damaged. At that time, he criticized that the law enforcement agencies had not taken this as seriously as they should have, which was much more severe than what Hillary faced. Who would be so absurd to create a group on Signal to discuss these things, right? Let's look at Donald Trump. The government is such an amateur government, okay.